people sitting there watching that. All right, looking good there. Okay, so we're going to go live to Facebook now. And I'll do a little announcement when we're up there too. All right, so we are live to Facebook. So I'll turn it over to you in just a second. I just got to check the sound. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us. We're doing first little live stream for the Speed of Transformation with LeBrent Speed. If you don't know LeBrent, you must. You're on his Facebook page. But great stuff today, talking about how to actually put transformation in action. So we'll be starting here in just a moment, but if you guys wouldn't mind sharing on your personal pages, comment below. He's got a good message. We're trying to get it out. We'll be starting very shortly. Okay, LeBrent, we'll be ready in just give me like 15 seconds. You can start.
Hello, friends and family. This is LeBrent Speed. I'm a speaker, health and wellness coach, and you are coming in live to the Speed of Transformation. The purpose of this podcast, there are lots of podcasts you can listen to, but the purpose of this is specifically to start talking about how we can change. See, change is something everybody wants, but very few people know how to do it. And so the purpose of this, we're going to go through the steps of transformation. We're going to talk about how to transform our health, our minds, our relationships, our finances, our businesses. And so we want to give you practical, in the future, we're going to have guests who's going to give you step-by-step guides and help you unlock your own keys to transformation. See, we can give you information, but ultimately it's how you use the information that really is important. See, people say knowledge is power, but I disagree with that premise, because if knowledge was actual power, we'd be the smartest, fittest, healthiest people on the planet. But that's not true. Although we're drowned in information, we lack the substance it takes to actually change. And my heart really is to give you what happened in my life, and using the skills that I use to transform my life, my body, and my mind, and hopefully that can help you and resonate with you as well. About 5 or 6, 7 years ago, about 7 years ago, I was going through my third divorce. And yes, I said that, my third divorce. And it was just as dramatic for me as you hearing it. I didn't think that would ever be a part of my life. Never thought I'd be divorced once, but let alone 3 times. And it just got to a point I felt overwhelmed. Not only was I going through my third divorce, I was morbidly obese, approaching 350 pounds. All my systems were getting messed up. And I just really started to ask, is this what life is? And ultimately, I had seen so many people who had tried to change, I had done diets, I lost weight, I had done all types of things. I worked, I went to the podcast, I read the books, I did all the stuff, but something just never seemed to click. And so I really went into this deep dive and study of how can people really change. You know, I know statistically, anyone that loses more than 50 pounds gains it back within 2 to 5 years. And if you're listening to me today, you know that probably is your story. You've lost weight before, you had hot girl summer or big dew fall, whatever it was, and ultimately that weight came back in. And so I really wanted to discover what makes people go back to what they once did, and what is real transformation that we can actually be changed and stay changed. You know, so I'm very grateful that over the course of the last several years, I've lost 130 pounds. 3 years ago, I got remarried, have a wonderful wife, and have a wonderful marriage. Also, have started very successful businesses. And what I want to do in our Speed of Transformation is give you some of those keys that I've used, not just through my personal life, but also hundreds of books and research and videos and reading studies after studies about what makes human beings different. One of the things I got delved deep into is neuroplasticity, like neuroscience and what makes people's mind change. And there used to be a school of thought that once you got once you got graded or tracked in terms of your intelligence in the third, fourth grade, whatever those standardized tests are, that's kind of where your intelligence is fixed. But now new studies are telling us over the last 5 to 10 years is that your intelligence can actually grow, not just your emotional intelligence, but your actual IQ can increase. And so I really became fascinated with the ideas of how do I increase my intelligence, how do I increase my emotional intelligence, how do I increase my spiritual intelligence, and what do I do in order to become the person I believed I was designed to become. When I was about 4 years old actually, my mom took me to get tested. I grew up in North Minneapolis, and she took me to school to get tested in kindergarten. And I remember walking down the street. I was very excited to be going to kindergarten. I was a little younger because my birthday is in September. And she took me into this guy, and they asked me all these questions about shapes and sizes. And I remember the questions, but I didn't know the answers. I didn't. Maybe my kindergarten or my preschool didn't really prepare me for this. So I remember very vividly, though, this guy said to my mother, "Miss Speed, LeBrent is slow. He cannot start school with the other kids, and I suggest you get him into some special education or things of that nature, but he really can't comprehend what's going on." Now, I wasn't really aware of what that meant, so I remember walking down the street with my mother, and as we were walking down the street, I asked my mom, I said, "Mom, what's slow?" And she grabbed me, looked me in my face, and her southern accent, she said, "Something you ain't." And from there, she looked up some yellow pages, and she looked for a private school. And she took me to this small school in Columbia Heights, Minnesota, called Faith Academy. And I had my first kindergarten teacher was Miss McCracken, yes, and she was just as she sounded. And it was just on my track that maybe my mom dropped that seed in me that whatever people said about me is not something I had to accept. And so as we go through the speed of transformation, as we talk about strategies and how to change where you are, you're really going to have to accept the fact that you are not what people say about you. You're not what you say about you. And so ultimately, I think it's really important that you come into grips with where you really are. And some of the things that we're going to do, later on this, I'm going to give you the 5 keys of transformation. It's something I've studied. I've come up with this on my own, but I realized as I've read books, autobiographies, and research in my own life, I realized there are 5 key areas that people need to change to unlock their own transformation. And so without these 5 things, transformation becomes something you do temporarily, but it's not something you can sustain. So we're only going to be talking about things that you can actually sustain. Health is something we'll talk a lot about because unfortunately people treat their health like it's disposable, that it's just this earth suit that you're wearing, but you're going to work every day, you grind. I would suggest to you that all people want to be happy. I just think people have the wrong priorities. They prioritize the wrong things. They prioritize their work or their careers. One of the things I often ask clients is, what's more important to you, your work or your wellness? And most people will say, my wellness is more important than my work. And I say, have you lived that out? And if they're going to be honest, and most of them are, they'll say, well, obviously I've not prioritized my wellness because I have high blood pressure and diabetes, I'm overweight, but I work really well. And I say, well, so what's that called? And they'll typically say, I don't know what's that called. And when I say I want one thing, but I actually do another. And I say that's cognitive dissonance. What that simply means is what you say you want is not what you actually do. And if you live a life of cognitive dissonance, you will live a life of depression, anxiety, stress, because what you say you desire is not what you actually desire. So one of my goals in my heart today, and for the rest of these programs, is to take you out of that state of cognitive dissonance, that your words align with who you really are, that your integrity lines up. There's a really good book that I read last year, and I use in some of my work. It's called The Good Life. And The Good Life is based on the Harvard Happiness Study. Harvard did a study in 1938 that is still continuing on right now. It's the longest study done in history. And the study is specifically designed to identify what makes people happy. And I think it'd be helpful to give you some insight to the study. They took some kids from Harvard, and then they took some kids from basically the slums of Boston. Now, all these were young white men. And so what they did was took them, they said, well, let's follow them for their entire lives and find out what actually makes them happy. So it was a really intensive study. They went into these young men's homes as they got older, as they had wives and children. They studied them. They put them in MRIs in the very early stages of MRIs. They did all these deep studies. And they would make them fill out surveys every couple of years. And the retention rate of this study was 83%. And what they found was there was one major key of happiness, but there are three what I call ancillary keys of happiness. And so one of the things that we'll be doing over the course of this program and over the guests, we'll talk about those ancillary keys of happiness, but then the main key of happiness. So the ancillary keys of happiness, the things that are really important, the ancillary keys of happiness, one is nutrition. Unfortunately, people don't think of that as something that makes them happy. Now, they think brunches and happy hours will make you happy. But actually, when you eat well, your body is fueled a certain way. You have more energy. You actually live longer. You have less pain and suffering because you don't have as many sicknesses. Most people don't understand that 90% of sicknesses and disease come from five major behaviors. Those five major behaviors are drinking, smoking, poor eating, lack of exercise, and stress. Those are the five key behaviors that lead to 90% of all sickness and disease in the world. So therefore, nutrition is one of those keys that actually are going to make you happy. If you learn how to eat well, how to fuel your body properly, you actually will increase your happiness quotient. I know it doesn't sound like it makes sense, but it does. The second key that he talks about, I'll call them ancillary keys. The second key of happiness, he says, is exercise, movement. A recent study showed that the average American walks between 3,500 to 4,000 steps a day. But if you just increase that or double that to 8,000 steps a day, you actually will increase on average your lifespan by 10 years. So movement is such an integral part of your happiness because we were made to move. And moving releases endorphins, it releases all kind of good feelings. It actually helps the longevity of your brain. What's good for your body is also good for your brain. So the ability to transform and move are really predicated on how you move your body. The third, what I call ancillary key of happiness, is purpose. Dr. Martin Luther King says it like this: if a person has not found out what they're willing to die for, they're not fit to live. Living a life, no matter how much money you make, if you don't live a life of purpose, that you feel fulfilled in with your work, it's going to be difficult for you to be motivated to get up in the morning no matter how much they pay you. So these are what we call the ancillary keys of happiness. But the book is really based on the major key of happiness. And some of you may have figured this out, but the major key of happiness is relationships. People who have good, solid relationships are the most well-adapted, happy people on the earth. Why? Because we're social creatures. COVID made us understand and amplified our need for human connection and human relationships. And social media does its best, if you will, to connect people, but it doesn't give us all we need for human connection. And what I would suggest is that it's not just our relationship with others that are valuable here, but it's our relationships with ourselves. I would say one of the most, I often share with people, I believe the most, as we move further with AI and artificial intelligence, it's going to be really important that we tone into our EI, which is emotional intelligence, or some call EQ. It's how you work, and EQ is really based on empathy, how you relate with other people. But one of the people you have to relate with well and have empathy for is yourself. You know, it's difficult for you to have a healthy relationship with others if you have a poor relationship with yourself. What does a good relationship with you look like? A good relationship with yourself looks like when you can keep the words you give to yourself. A good relationship with yourself means you can say good things about yourself without beating yourself up. The self-talk becomes more positive and affirming versus negative and destructive. And I find that people who learn how to transform learn how to talk to themselves well. And so we'll talk more about how do we speak to ourselves, how do we affirm ourselves, how do we energize ourselves versus beat ourselves up. Listen, the world has enough things going on with you. Listen, you have about, the average human being has about 60 or 70,000 thoughts a day. And the question becomes, how many of those thoughts that you have a day are positive about you? And how many of those thoughts you have a day are negative? And if the more the thoughts you have are negative about you, the less likelihood are you ever going to move out of that. You're going to keep repeating those thoughts every day, and your today will look like yesterday, and your tomorrow will look like today. Nothing will change. And you'll say, I want to try a new diet, I want to get healthy, but ultimately you won't be able to do anything because what you say out loud is not as powerful what you're saying on the inside. See, your subconscious is about 80 times percent bigger than your conscious mind. It keeps your blood pumping, your heart pumping. It keeps you going when you're asleep. Your subconscious is way more powerful than your conscious mind. Therefore, it's so important that we feed our subconscious mind the information that it needs to make us feel good about ourselves. So I would say having a relationship with ourselves is more important than a relationship with others. Because I am a minister, I'm a Christian, no matter what your faith background is, I think having a relationship with your Creator is really important as well. How you work with what you consider your higher power, for me, is God, the God of the universe. For me, I believe that's important. But I often think that it's interesting that people think they can have this incredible relationship with God, the universe, or their higher power, but you don't even like you. Well, if you don't like you, how would you like the God that made you? So relationships with yourself, relationship with your Creator, relationships with other people, these three key relationships are really what's going to fuel your happiness. And so as we go through this course, as we have guests on, we'll be talking about how they interact with themselves, how they interact with others, how they interact with their Creator. Those are really important for the well-being of themselves. Because if you're not good to you, and if you don't know what you need to do to be good to you, if you think taking a trip, and listen, I love vacations, I love trips, but if you think that's the height of your wellness, if you can't be well to yourself until you're on a beach, if you can't be well to yourself until you're doing something, just because you call shopping therapy doesn't make it actual therapy. If you got bills afterwards over something you did, that doesn't make it therapeutic. Just going to eat somewhere, right now, the mental and physical state of our country is really at a miss. Right now, more people are suffering from depression, anxiety than ever before. More people the good news is more people are seeking psychiatric therapeutic help than ever before. The bad news is that it's actually not helping. More people are getting on medications, but more people aren't being helped. So therefore, it's really difficult for people to feel good. And then look at the state of our physical health. We're one of the few generations that may live shorter lives than our parents did. Even with technology and information, we still can't take care of ourselves. Why is that? Because we are a very obese nation. 42% of Americans are obese. Speaking of an African American stand, because I'm African American, 50% of African Americans are obese. We are the most obese people on the planet, which leads us to a myriad of health diseases. 40% of African Americans have high blood pressure. Well, as an African American man, my life expectancy is 6 years shorter than a white man. And a black woman is 60% more likely to die of a stroke or a heart attack, which is the number one killer for all Americans. So if you don't take care of your body, this temple, if you will, if you don't take care of it, it won't take care of you. There's no way you can do all the things. And we now live in this culture where people talk about chasing the bag and chasing your dream job and doing this. How is it you're chasing the bag, but you can't even run? We're chasing things, but we're not taking care of the thing that we're living in every single day. So we'll be okay with pains and aches and taking all these prescription medicines instead of doing what the doctor asks us to do. And so I want to encourage you to really evaluate your life, evaluate the choices of your life. That if you're not pleased with how you feel, and again, it's not about looks. You can look good at any size. You can look good at a 2 or 32. But what is your body telling you? What are your body number? What are the mechanics of your body? How does your body feel? Your back, your knees, your elevated blood sugar, your elevated blood pressure. Many civilized countries are actually calling Alzheimer's dementia diabetes 3 because there's a direct corollary between a high elevated blood sugar and Alzheimer's dementia. And so what we're not sharing is how we're eating this fast-paced world. So we want to talk, we want to lean into that, but also our mental health. How do we take care of our mentals, our spiritual health, our emotional health? Emotional health is the key emotional intelligence. If people can't manage their emotions, there's not going to be a lot for them to do. If you go off the handle as soon as you drive down the street, that's a problem. And then I believe your financial. There's nothing wrong with having wealth and having abundance. But if you have a scarcity mindset, it will impact every area of your life. You can't be really abundant if you have a scarcity mindset. So this is what part of transformation looks like. And I want to give you, before I close out today, I want to give you what I call the 5 keys of transformation. Again, everything I do will be based on these 5 keys of transformation. And if you can master these 5 keys, again, you're humans, but when you can walk in these 5 keys to the best of your ability, I find no matter what I've read, no matter what I've seen, people who master these 5 keys in these 5 areas really found the keys to transform their lives. And so the number one key I want to talk about before we close out is state. When I talk about your state, I'm talking about your mental state, your emotional state, your spiritual state. It's difficult for you to move and do things, and say if you want to lose weight, or you want to have create more business. Well, if your mental state, your emotional state are always off balance, if your mental state can never, if you're always depressed, if you never have joy, if you don't have any gratitude is the key of unlocking you from any emotional state. Because what happens is, depression, anxiety, especially in our culture with social media, typically we're comparing ourselves to other people. We're comparing what they have, what trip they did, what relationship someone else has. But when you can be grateful for what you have, what happens is you release yourself from comparison. So people who have a gratitude and people who are joyous about life, these are the people who are in a right state in order to produce transformation in their life. You can sit up all you want and talk to yourself about how much I'm gonna lose this 50 pounds, I'm gonna travel around the world. But if your state is that of negativity instead of positivity, if your attitude is poor, how are you going to get a promotion if you have a bad attitude? So your mental, emotional, and spiritual state are pivotal. They're the building block. And so we'll be using strategies. How do I change? If you feel like, some people say, I'm just naturally pessimistic, or I'm a realist. Well, typically realist for most people just means they're being negative all the time. So we're not talking about people who are what would they call realists. Realist doesn't mean you always see the negative side of things. Realist means you see things, but you also see an opportunity in those things. So I don't want you to believe that just because you're real, you keep it real, that means that's where you need to be. Ultimately, that doesn't mean you have to see things through a negative light. So key to changing your state, we'll talk about some of the things that you can do. One of the things I adopted over about 5 years ago to really alter my state was a really powerful morning routine. A really good book I read, it's called Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. Talks about having this certain things you need to do every morning. So over time, we'll talk about what it means to have a really powerful morning routine. One of the things I want to encourage you today is, if you wake up first thing in the morning, you're looking at what people are saying to you. They're asking, requesting from you. You're opening up your emails. What you're doing is you're living in a state of reaction. You're starting off in this semi-sleep state. Your brain waves are really receptive to suggestion at that time. And if you're coming out of your sleep and you're reading texts and you're reading emails, you're opening yourself to have a reactive all day. You're reacting to what people are saying to you. You're reacting to what people are doing. You're reacting to social media. You're already agitating your state. And so there are strategies you can employ right now to really help you. The first thing I would do is wake up and have your own routine in which you cut off, if at all possible, cut off the world. For me, I get up at 4 a.m. to do that. And so you have to protect your peace. People talk about protecting their peace, but very, very few people do it. So protecting your peace is a key to stay. So we'll bring some of our experts and some of our professionals that come on here and talk about how do they protect their peace? How do they make sure they're in the right state to achieve? People who are in good relationships, how do they protect their peace? I find that people in good relationships respond differently to their spouses than people in bad relationships. And people in good relationships know how to make sure they're in the right attitude when they speak to their spouse, even about tough subjects. But state is the key. It's the building block of transformation. So if you don't alter your state, you will never alter anything else. So we're gonna spend a lot of time talking about how to alter our current state. Number two, it's really important, is I call this your system. The system is, I found that everything in this earth, from the earth itself, from the rotation, how we rotate around the sun, to the tides, everything functions on a system. And I would specifically tell you every positive thing, every good thing has a system. There are a variety of systems for health and eating. There's intermittent fasting. There are small meals. With those who want, I'll share what I did to lose the weight. But ultimately, everything good operates in a system. I found that good relationships operate in systems. Good companies have good systems. You're never going to go to a productive company and they're like, how do you guys do this? I don't know. We just answer the phones and throw them the stuff. No, every company, every organization, every relationship, every good health has a system. And what I would encourage you is that part of your plan is you have to find a system that works for you. Now, this is what I want to give you a caveat. And one, it has to be a successful system. You can eat a donut once a day and lose weight. That doesn't mean it's healthy for you, right? So you got to find a healthy system in any area of your life. But one thing I would encourage you is that when I talk to people, they often are trying to look for the system that's easiest for them. This one fits me, this one I like, this one I don't like, this. And what you find is that people are system shopping. Instead of looking for the right system for them to engage and say, I can do what I need to do, they go system shopping. They look at someone that's successful in their marriage, they look at someone successful in their health, and they system shop. Well, I want the easiest road. Well, listen, let me give you a little information. The things that we will talk to you may be simple, but they're never easy. If you've been overweight for 40 years, I promise you, losing 80 pounds and keeping it off will not be easy. There are mental fights you're going to go through. Listen, I'm not going to sit on here as if I don't have mental fights. I have an addiction to sugar, and so I love sugar, but I have to know it don't love me in return. So there are things I have to do in order to do that. So number two is really important. You got to find systems. So we're going to talk to successful people about what systems they're using in order to find success in their own lives. Those systems may or may not work for you, but you have to find those systems. Number three is really key. Is structure. One of my good books that I really love is The Power of Habits. The Power of Habits really talks about, and many of you may are familiar with atomic habits and James Clear atomic habits. And really, structure are just your habits. If you believe you got into the right state of positivity, good attitude, you found a system that worked for you. Well, now you have to align your structure or your habits to those systems. So I can always talk to somebody and find out how successful they are based on their habits. Successful people have habits. Tony Robbins often says success leaves clues. If you don't have particular habits, you're never going to adopt certain things. And I would suggest to you, if you want something in your life, what you need to be more obsessed with is the results, but be obsessed with the habits. What habits can I do? What habits can I enact in my life in order to get me some of those things that I need? So I would tell you that you need to find out the habits that are really important. So we'll talk about the habits successful people use in order to change their lives. Number four, really important, is your surroundings. Surroundings speaks to your relationships. Surroundings speak to your the people, your friends. Surroundings speaks to what you put in your environment. It's really important that if you want to change anything in your life, you have to have the right surroundings. You have to write the right friends. I found that most of my life, I did not surround myself with the right people, and therefore I did not get the right results. You've got to surround yourself with the right people, and those right people will give you what you need in order to move you forward. Harvard did a study years ago about they can identify a person's income and their credit and their employment based on the 5 closest people to them without ever speaking to them. So your surroundings have an oversized impact on your life, your relationships that you choose. And so it's really important that you start really thinking, do you have people in your life just because they're because you grew up with them, because they're comfortable, because you're not used to having anyone else in your life. No, you got to find the right people to have in your life, and surroundings is key to having the right people in your life. And last and not least, I think is really important, is that you got to serve. You got to serve other things. What I find is that some of the things that don't motivate you, because, Maslow's hierarchy of needs says it like this: the highest level of the hierarchy of needs for Maslow was transcendence or contribution. If you don't contribute to anything outside of yourself, that's a pretty low existence. And what happens is it's difficult to motivate you to do the hard things if it's only about you. But if it becomes about your spouse or your children or your grandchildren or your society, your culture, when I think about Mahatma Gandhi, when I think about Mother Teresa, when I think about Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, they did things for their culture. They did things for their community. It wasn't about them. They weren't just doing things for them. And I would encourage you, and I'm going to ask you, what about what you want to transform? How does that impact other people? How does you getting healthy impact other people? What if you did get an influx of money? How would that impact the people around you? How will you make the earth a better place than it is now? And I'll find that people who serve other things, they find that their lives are more rich, they're better, and they become a more impactful person. Their stories are stronger. And so I really want to encourage you, as we walk through these things, we're going to walk through these 5 keys of transformation. Sometimes we might spend all on state. We might spend some time on service, but we're always going to spend something on these 5 keys of transformation. As I close out today, I just want to let you know that I believe in you. I believe that you can change whatever you want. That as I was sitting on my couch some 7 years ago, overweight, broke, and alone, I just believe that you can do it. I believe I listened to my mom, and she told me that I didn't have to be stuck where I was. There was a scripture my mom used to say to me all the time. She said, your gift and call will make room for you. I didn't understand what that actually meant, but I do know now that whether you believe in the Bible or not, I will tell you that your gifts, the things you pour into, they will come out of you. And so today I want to encourage you and let you know that you can be the person you identified, that you dreamed about. It will take work. It will take focus. It will take energy, but you can do it. And so I just want to leave you with that. If you want to contact me, please feel free to contact me. Reach out to me if you want personal coaching. Facebook, LeBrent Speed. You can reach out to me personally on my cell phone. That information should be on there. Also, if you want to have me speak to your company, your organization, do a conference. I do conferences. I do speaking for organization when I talk about holistic health. Also do some work in DEI and what that means for holistic health. I have a manager who that information will be on there as well. So I want you to have a wonderful day. I want you to know that your life is what you make it. And if you transform your mind, you will transform your life. Listen, have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you guys soon.